Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Never before in the history of sports podcasts have two men brought you opinion and analysis like these two. They speak for a city that's desperate for wins and titles, not whining and travesty. You might not agree with what they have to say, but you'll defend their right to say it. Sports fans across the world, from Chicago, Illinois, this is the Mac and Reed Show.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Mac and Reed Show right here on the Ballroom Network. Follow at Ballroom Network for all the breaking Bears news as this 2024-2025 season rolls on. And, of course, follow me and Ross on social media. He's at Ross Reed. I am at The Real Evan Mac. If you like the audio-only version of the show, it's on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast. Like, subscribe, tell a friend or two. But we hope you're joining us on the YouTube live stream where you can comment, talk shit, or praise us, or ask Ross what his favorite color is, or favorite Madonna album is. Anything you like. Many questions we will answer throughout the show. But, of course, it'll be very Bears heavy as it's a new era with the Bears as far as head coaching is concerned. Thomas Brown in, Matt Eberflus out. We'll talk about the repercussions of that. Talk about Caleb Williams' development. Talk about where the team is at as they head to San Francisco this Sunday in an afternoon game in the Bay Area with a battered 49ers team. But we'll talk about NFL headlines as well after that. Crazy year for Kendrick, what Ross and mine Spotify Unwrapped is like, some impressions with that as we're in the last month of this year of our Lord 2024. And, of course, I am joined, as usual, by this guy over here, the mayor of the South Loop, a leader of men, he's been called. And he made a GoFundMe for the Kendrick tickets in June when he comes to Soldier Field with SZA. Ross Reed, ladies and gentlemen, what's happening?
Yo, what's up? And of course, it's definitely a toss-up between Madonna's self-titled project and Like a Virgin.
God damn, look at this guy.
Both amazing 80s projects.
He's an 80s baby. We love that. Good to see you, man. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving. We were off during that week from scheduling ramifications, logistics, and all that, but definitely stuffed. We had some good time with the family, and I know you did as well. But Bears football was played that day, and just it's been talked ad nauseum after that, of course. But that the big fallout after that crazy loss to Detroit was the firing of Matt Eberflus, and it's never happened in the history of this Bears organization when they fired a coach mid-season, as you were, or in season, as it were. So a new head coach in town. And if you're looking for someone to emulate in terms of moving up in the world career-wise, Thomas Brown is it, baby. Passing game coordinator to offensive coordinator, now to interim head coach. Oh, boy, things are looking up for this guy taking the reins. And it's a good time to audition for the head coaching job, if not, another one around the league if this does not go well for him. We talked in our last show if there would be anything that would save Matt Eberflus's job last time, and Ross said nothing, and I agreed, short of winning. You figure if maybe they call that timeout that he didn't know he had, or didn't think he had, or didn't use, whatever way he spun it, and they kick a field goal and win or tie that game, whatever happens, maybe we're having a different conversation. But enough was enough to Kevin Warren and the Bears brass and ownership. An incredible string of losses for the Bears to fire him before season's end, and his legacy is really just one of the worst. Between Matt Nagy and Mark Trestman, just a couple guys who just have been in the last decade of Bears just mired in mediocrity that they've been at. But he's gone. We'll discuss it a little bit, but now the focus is, of course, on Thomas Brown, who, in the time he took over for Shane Waldron, has already seemingly made leaps and bounds. And Caleb Williams, you see in his development, and that's always going to lead the headlines as well. Not just win losses, but how is that number one overall pick doing? And And Caleb Williams played his ass off against, the one of the best teams and the Super Bowl favorite, at least in the league, and number one team next to the Eagles in the NFC, and the Lions in with pretty hostile territory. He was the focal point, and what a way to finish. I know they took the loss, but he's getting more confident as the games go along. The throws are getting out quicker. Throws are sensational too. Just the accuracy, the balls he gives Keenan Allen and DJ Moore and company. Really, really just impressive. His development, the quickness he gets the ball out. I mentioned that. And yeah, just his development seems to be pointing in the right direction. Against one of the top defenses in the NFL. What I guess we'll lead with that, on the heels of Eberflus and talking about head coaching in a moment. But, Caleb Williams thus far, Ross, what have you liked? What did you not like, at least from Detroit and recently? And, what made you go, wow? What are your impressions?
Yeah, I mean, another, game from Caleb Williams. The offense kind of sputters a little bit in the first half. You're kind of wondering what's going on here. They're not able to move the ball on the ground in the air. But in the second half, he tends to come alive a little bit. He comes alive when he tends to play a little bit more backyard football and take in things into his own hands. He starts to scramble a little bit more, move the ball, move the chains with his legs. Like you said, he starts to get the football out quicker. He seems to love firing the football to Keenan Allen when he wants to get the ball out quick and fast. And he made some great plays in that second half, and he brought the Bears back. And then once again, we sound like a broken record here, but he put them in a position to, at bare minimum, tie the game, if not, win the football game. And his head coach let him down, which is why his head coach is sitting at home on the sofa tonight and not preparing for San Francisco. But I'm impressed with Caleb Williams and his ability to grow week after week, despite the poor infrastructure around him from what the Bears have built, in particular with Eberflus and the coaching staff. I do think that Thomas Brown has been a massive upgrade for Caleb. We've seen Caleb Williams' numbers skyrocket over the last couple of weeks since Thomas Brown took over. He's in position. He's already broken every Bears QB rookie record. That was a very low bar to hit. And now he's knocking on the door at 3,000 yards, and he's got 14 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He's on pace for a 3,700 yard, 20 touchdown, 7-8 interception rookie season. And I think, given the circumstances, you lost your head coach, you lost your offensive coordinator, everything that's happened. You've had injuries on the offensive line. He's been sacked 49 times this year, so he's on pace to be sacked the most times ever for a rookie in NFL history. It's been a success for me. And so I want to see him continue to build on this. I think it was a fun test for Thomas Brown this weekend and the offense to go into San Francisco, which, they were in the Super Bowl last year. Granted, this is a much different San Francisco team. They're beaten up right now. Their season is also done right now too. But let's just keep stacking a little bit. Let's keep seeing Caleb Williams continue to stack good games. And, I'll be honest with you, the wins and losses at this point, they don't mean much to me because this team is out of the playoff hunt anyway. I just want to see him continue to play well, play with confidence, and see if he can progress. I mean, he's been everything as advertised, given the circumstances. He doesn't have a guy like Bo Nix has and Sean Payton, who's able to scheme open wide, receivers. Like, that guy's a professional coach. He's going to go to Hall of Fame one day. Even, what's going on in Washington right now, even though Jamie Daniels is coming back down to earth a little bit as a passer, their infrastructure was a lot stronger. So I think Caleb Williams has done the best he can with what has the cards that have been dealt to him. And I really just want him to stay healthy the rest of the year and continue to build on this, because that means the future is bright. If the Bears nail this head coaching pick, they can get back into the playoff hunt very, very quick.
Yeah, that is looming large is now what will the Bears do at head coach, and it's almost overshadowing what Caleb Williams has been able to accomplish, and seeing him play against the Packers and against the Vikings and against the Lions, against your toughest competition, your divisional competition, making noise, and he's got swagger about him, and playing his best football is what it's all about, and getting to see those teams again in this later stretch. He'll have that chip on his shoulder saying, we came up short. We know we can beat these guys. Why not? At this point, like you said, they have nothing to play for as far as a playoff berth is concerned, but they could play spoiler to the Packers or Lions, who are, vying for now, 1 or 2 seeds. or wild card spots even. Same goes for the Packers and the Vikings and the Lions. It was not fun to hear Dan Campbell say, Caleb Williams likes to go in and out of bounds. We're going to hit him. And we told the refs about that. And all the Bears players were like, well, what are you doing here? And it's like, well, if he's not going out of bounds, then he's fair game. And Caleb
That's
Williams,
football, right? Yeah, that's football.
Exactly. That's going
He's going to learn.
That's going
to
make him
learn after that one hit that came on the sidelines. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no kidding. But really great football he's been playing. Again, like you said, just in the midst of this, where Matt Eberflus was fired after 12 games, and his quotes, to take one word from all of it, was interesting. And he said, quote, "It's interesting. I don't get any say or choice over that. I have to roll with the punches. Like I said, it's interesting. It's tough. He's the reason," speaking about Eberflus, "of why I'm here. He drafted me. And so going through that and the process is interesting for me," end quote. And his use of interesting is just like, come on, man. So many guys were stepping on eggshells, or I feel like just treading lightly, and didn't want to really drag Eberflus because he is still respected, and just, despite losing the locker room and despite a lot of players being more outspoken for it, again, like we've talked about, respected in the league, and certainly will probably go on to be a defensive coordinator elsewhere, do something else. But beside that, he talked about embracing that, adversity and just a stepping stone of development, and saw, into his crystal ball of the future. So, I could have several head coaches or another several offensive coordinators, which we certainly hope is not the case. But he's just saying, it shouldn't affect my development because it's out of his control, and he's got to do what he can do with the personnel on the field, and that leads us to Thomas Brown, who, now is jumping to the sidelines as opposed to up in the booth calling the plays for the Bears on offense, which he will still do, but now taking the helm. And it's great to see a young coach who's 38 and really on a good trajectory of development of these young guys out there, like a Shanahan, or any of these younger guys out there who have already made waves, like a Sean McVay in the league. I'm curious to see how, I've already seen in the press conferences how it's night and day for Eberflus, because he knew it was kind of a dead man walking, but it's great to see his different, words to the team. And so, what is he going to bring to the table, starting Sunday and the rest of the season, Ross and Brown?
I think he's going to bring a lot of energy to the table and a lot of accountability. And I think that's two things that have been lacking the last few weeks from the Bears. I think we can all agree that the Bears roster, offense, defense, special teams, they quit on Matt Eberflus. And, we heard the rumblings a couple weeks ago about Jalen Johnson blowing up on Matt Eberflus in the locker room after he, walks away from that Thanksgiving game with a timeout in his pocket. Again, just another blunder from Eberflus at the end of the game. And when your in was in a position to bare minimum tie the football game. So, and we've also seen on, just in the clips of Thomas Brown being in the booth, he has a lot of energy. And I think the team is going to feed off of that, especially this week on the road in a tough environment. But I think the locker room really likes him, really appreciates him, and they want to fight for him for these last few weeks. These guys are professionals. These guys are professional athletes. They get paid a lot of money. They have a lot of pride. They're not used to winning. All these guys have been successful on every level that they've been in, except for this point in their careers. And so I think they're going to go out there and fight. And it's also, it's different. It's awesome point for Thomas Brown. It's an awesome point for Washington, who gets to call plays as a defensive coordinator for Eric Washington, gets to call plays for the first time as defensive coordinator in his career. So this is a big spot for him. This is a big spot for these guys, because these guys are playing for their coaching careers too. If Thomas Brown is successful for this, he not only gets considered for the Bears head coaching job, obviously, he gets looked at for other head coaching jobs around the league. He already got interviews when he came out as Panthers offensive coordinator. He gets to potentially be the, even if he doesn't get the Bears job, potentially be the top offensive coordinator on the market next year. So I think you're going to see a lot of energy and a lot of grit and grind from this football team. Does it translate to wins? Who knows? We'll see. Hopefully. I think this San Francisco team is very vulnerable this Sunday. They got a lot of injuries. They're very beaten up right now. I also think that they're kind of dead in the mud a little bit. But I just want to see this team fight, and we want to see this team play smart, disciplined football too, most importantly, in all three phases. We've seen – you take that last drive, for example, against the Lions on Thanksgiving Day. They had 3 timeouts. They had 3 timeouts. They blow 2 timeouts because they couldn't get the play off in time at the line of scrimmage. They had some penalties. They had plenty of time. Those are the things that you have to clean up as a professional football team going forward. And so hopefully those things happen this Sunday. We saw the new offensive coordinator, today talk about how they want to simplify things in the huddle for Caleb Williams. They want to get the plays in an orderly fashion with him. When it comes to 2-minute drills, they want to make sure that they have the next play on deck before the current play is already over, and get things hurried up. He said he took accountability, something that Eberflus never did, talking about he wanted to, make sure that the coaches are the ones that call the timeouts in an orderly fashion. So that's the most important thing is going forward. Fight hard, play good disciplined football, take some accountability.
Yeah, that accountability is huge. Again, something that Matt Eberflus did not do well in his tenure as the Bears head coach. And Thomas Brown, that breath of fresh air, just a good young offensive mind. And like you talked about, hit it on the head as far as this is an audition perhaps for the Bears coaching job. You figure he'd be a shoo-in, would have the edge if he's able to rattle off some wins, especially divisional wins with Caleb Williams, and make noise in the division and have some confidence to end it, at least with Caleb Williams and this unit intact. Outside of that, just again, on the head coaching note, before we talk about that 49ers matchup, it's frustrating to think about Kevin Warren being the person who has the final say. And maybe I'm alone in this. Feel free to chime in on the comments if you're watching us live on YouTube, the Mac and Reed Show here on Barroom Network. But I'm discouraged by that. I think it's Ryan Poles' position to make that call. And I know that Kevin Warren will have input, but there's a point where you're just kind of doing too much. And then there's also which I feel like Ross talked about at length on Twitter today, which he thought was, quote, 100,000% not true about the old Jim Harbaugh story. But more so the comments about Kevin Warren making the head coaching decision or having an integral part of that was concerning to me. I don't know how you felt about it, Ross.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, because, you hear stuff like that. I never thought that, Harbaugh wanted to come back to Chicago. This guy's in his 60s right now. This guy's been standing on sidelines in the Midwest and Michigan for, I don't know how long he's been there, for 10 plus years, right? And I think he was at a point where, you start, listen, we're getting older ourselves. I'm 43 years old. You start standing outside on a day like today, and it doesn't feel good to stand outside in Chicago. And there's an opportunity on the table to coach in Los Angeles with a Chargers team that already had Justin Herbert in that roster. I think he was maybe using the Bears a little bit as leverage. That's why I think that story was overblown. It's been debunked a little bit, out there. I think Harbaugh would have been the perfect choice for a head coach. I just think he never wanted to come to Chicago. And I think the Bears knew that last year. I think, when the Ryan Poles comments last season were very telling about that. But, the thing with Kevin Warren leading the charges is, we saw the press conference on Monday. As much as I like Ryan Poles, and I tend to give him the benefit of the doubt, he looked very shaky up there on Monday. And he looked like a guy who was not confident in himself. He looked like a guy who was not confident in the decisions that he's made, and wasn't confident in even meeting with the media. And I think I think Kevin Warren, at the very least, does bring a little bit of an adult dad energy into the room. And I think that he's able to kind of stabilize things. I still think this is Ryan Poles' show in terms of finding the head coach, but Kevin Warren does bring a little bit of a professional stabilization into the situation. And I'll be completely honest with you. You and I, as well as the people in the chat, we could come up with the 5 best names to be able to talk to from a head coaching standpoint.
They've
right?
been circulated a lot.
Exactly. Yeah. We know the Ben Johnsons of the world, and the Joe Brady's of the world, and the Brian Flores's, and the Mike Vrabels, and guys like that. And we know if they're available via trade, you can call for Kyle Shanahan, you can call for Sean McVay. Like, we already know those things are out there. So I think what Kevin Warren helps with Ryan Poles is, when it's time to actually sit down with these guys, help him identify a little bit. Because remember, this is the guy that brought in Shane Waldron, over Thomas Brown, and over Cliff Kingsbury, and over Liam Cohen, who's probably going to get a look as well, the Tampa Bay offensive coordinator, and stuff like that. So I do think that there's a little bit of a concern as a non-football guy with Kevin Warren, but you also have to remember he's been around the game for a long time, and he does bring a little bit of a professional, corporate level to these interviews and the structure to help Ryan Poles go through this, because this is Ryan Poles' most important head coaching hire, because it'll probably be his last one as a Bears general manager. If this doesn't work, he's going to be out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be another scapegoat type of story after that. I hear what you're saying with Warren, and time will tell how integral he is of a part, and maybe it'll just sort of be an easier decision for them. I know that Matt Frachizi was just saying Ben Johnson coaching was Bush League versus us, and yeah, I get it. It's also, and I think you tweeted too early about him being the Maserati, and then all of a sudden the Bears started lighting up. You got to do that more often, Ross, and during the game, but. All these names are just names at this point. I think the focus is obviously on Thomas Brown and that connection with Caleb Williams, which he's already made clear is a pretty good one. And they want to build something together. And Thomas Brown wants to build on his, NFL coaching career, as it were. And Caleb Williams just wants to stack wins no matter who's the head coach. And it starts with, his development. This year's a wash. It's his rookie year, but the time to excel is now. That sort of championship window when you have that number one overall pick. Like the clock's already been ticking. Year one is done here. You gotta strike while the iron's hot, and that'll certainly be building the roster and addressing the offensive line and the needs on the defense as well. But right now that focuses on the 49ers and what they are going to be doing against San Francisco. And in the chat, someone asked about Jaquan Brisker. I don't know if you had any recent news about that. He's not. I know he was on IR, and I think that they might wait another week.
Yeah, he's still on IR. Given the circumstances right now with where they're at in the season, he might just stay there for the rest of the year and get him healthy and get him right for next season. Ben Johnson, by the way, Lions offense number one in the NFL all across the board this year, and they've got They have a league record plus 180 in the point differential margin. So listen, I know we like to use first halves of football as the end all be all, but you need to zoom out a little bit when you're looking at some of these guys and not just what you watch when you were drinking your Kahlua on Thanksgiving Day for a half.
That Bears injury report is pretty light right now. DeAndre Swift, DJ Moore, Roschon Johnson, Elijah Hicks, Kevin Byard, all questionable right now. It's really just the 49ers obviously losing Christian McCaffrey is just such a huge blow for them, and Jordan Mason on top of that, going down to your third string running back. They've had injuries to the defense as well. They've had injuries all over. Brock Purdy missing some time, but he'll be ready to go. Losing Brandon Ayuk. It's just been a crazy follow-up season. The polar opposite of what the Chiefs have been able to do pretty much. I mean, they're not the worst team in the league, but they've just had some terrible breaks. But in that division, I don't know, they're still chasing a slight hope. And they certainly need to stack wins to try and get into the wild card spot or into the playoffs, period. But against the 49ers, what I want to see from the Bears is obviously to continue to sling it and take risks downfield. DeAndre Swift has just had kind of a dud game the past couple weeks, and certainly missing Roschon Johnson may have been a part of that, and just getting away from the run game when you're getting blown out to start the game and then finishing just having to pass takes a little bit of that, or takes some of the predictability away, takes the edge away when you're just going strictly pass. And the defense with these injuries, as a unit, I think they've done pretty well. I think they did pretty well, all things considered, against their NFC North opponents. And 49ers still obviously have weapons in Kittle and Debo, and Brock Purdy is, the reigning NFC Championship quarterback and had a Super Bowl appearance. So he's no slouch. He'll be ready to rock. So I want to see how the Bears game plan for him on Sunday as well. But it obviously, that big storyline is going to be Caleb Williams. And if the Bears have, as a team, had a little bit of a long layoff from Thanksgiving, I'd like to see how he slings it, if he can continue this great production that he's had over the last few games. So, what other keys you got for 49ers on Sunday, Ross?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the 49ers defense right now, they're beaten up right now. They've got Bosa is going to be questionable with an oblique injury right now. Greenlaw is out. Lenore is out. We know Fred Warner is playing on a fractured ankle.
That's crazy.
which is just absolutely insane.
No.
I love Fred Warner, man. He's one of my favorite players in the league.
Beast.
Givens is on injured reserve right now. They are completely beaten up on defense, and they're also coming off a very physical snow game in Buffalo. And then they got their asses kicked, and then they have to travel, back cross country. So, I mean, this team to me is ripe a little bit for you to be able to put some points on them. We got some statistics here. Caleb Williams, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now against the blitz. So, you blitz him at your own risk. I think Brian Flores found that out in that Vikings game, that Caleb Williams will absolutely light you up. He's one of the best in the league right now in air yards as well. He's averaging air yards 289, per game. So, we've seen him, in my opinion, you need to get him out on the edge a little bit more and allow him the ability to extend the play so he can put that football downfield. I think this 49ers secondary is very vulnerable. This has to be a game where him and Roman Dunze start to really build on that connection. Around this time of the year for rookie wide receivers is the time of the year where these rookie wide receivers start to take that next leap a little bit. And we haven't seen it yet with any of these guys. Rookie wide receivers notoriously take quite a while to ease themselves into the season, ease themselves into things. They're very different from like running backs. Running backs, they start hot at the beginning of the year, especially rookies, and they kind of flame out at the end of the year. It's the exact opposite for wide receivers. So I actually think this is a Roman Dunze moment. I think this is a game where he can have 80 to 100 yards in the air. I think this is a game where he can get behind that 49ers defense and get a touchdown, and him and Caleb Williams start to make that connection. I also think this is a good game. Test that Fred Warner ankle, test these linebackers a little bit. You get Keenan Allen on some crossers. You get Cole Kmet on some seam routes and getting up the field a little bit. In other words, get Caleb some time if you can, get him out on the edge a little bit, and allow him to kind of push the football downfield a little bit more. You have nothing else to lose. You are a 4-8 football team. You are riding a 6-game losing streak right now. You are a interim head coach who wants to show the world on national television, because there's only 3 games in the spotlight on this Sunday, that you've got the goods. This is a moment to do it against a guy like Kyle Shanahan. And listen, Kyle Shanahan might be looking at this too, a little envious, and saying he might call his agent on Monday and say, you know what, give me that job, because I can't stay here.
There's been a trade.
I can't stay here. My whole entire team is old, and Trent Williams is old, and Bosa and Warner, and they're going to pay Brock Purdy $200 million, and McCaffrey can't stay healthy anymore. Give me Chicago with this kid, and it's not out of the possibility that something like that could happen.
Crazy to think about. Excuse me. And again, just kind of talking about the window of when the 49ers and championship window for any team, but 49ers specifically right now is closing real fast. And Christian McCaffrey, as good as he was last year, just kind of like the equivalent of Saquon Barkley this year, maybe we'll add a comparison to. He's just so often injured. You just can't really be trusting a guy like that when he just got the bag. And same with the skill position players. You talk about the Trent Williams is old and the offensive line getting up there. The oldest team going into, cumulatively going into the season, looks like that's fast approaching. Kyle Shanahan might look for his next job. But
it's very reminiscent to me of the Andy Reid situation, leaving the Eagles, heading over to the Chiefs type of thing. I would not be surprised, even when John Gruden left the Buccaneers way back when to go to the Raiders. I would not be surprised if Kyle Shanahan found his way out of San Francisco at the end of the year. And I think it makes sense for both sides, because they're going to have to rebuild that roster, and he's not going to stick around for that.
Sure. You got to have his escape plan. He's still such a very young coach and did great things in San Francisco, but still came up short, not winning the Super Bowl ultimately. But I agree with you. Just getting Rome going, it would be nice, because that Caleb and Rome are going to be pretty connected for the years to come here. And again, going back to the run game, to take pressure off Caleb Williams with a battered linebacker core and defensive line for the 49ers, run that rock, man, with Roschon Johnson and DeAndre Swift if they're both a go. I know they're both questionable right now, but I imagine they won't carry any injury designations come Sunday. And with the defense, whether they have a complement of Jaquan Brisker or whoever's out there, or Byard and company, we just haven't seen a pass rush. I'm not expecting one at this point, but they've been able to keep teams to within like 20-ish points, something like that. And then the Bears can play their game. And then the Bears can also just try to force mistakes, force turnovers, whether those be fumbles or an interception thrown by Brock Purdy. We've seen it before. So curious, very, very curious to see which Bears team we see. I mean, they've been competitive with every team in those last several games. They've all been one score games, but to take the edge, it would be nice to see Thomas Brown start off with a win on Sunday. Obviously, it'll be beautiful conditions. It'll be much different than a cold, windy lakefront game here. And we'll give predictions to end the game, Ross. But did you see any? We talked about a head coach trade in the chat. Mm-hmm. Would you entertain anything like that, Ross?
If it's a guy like Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay, I would 100% do it. And I know, listen, I know people are going to say, the last time a head coach like that was traded, I don't count Sean Payton because he wasn't coaching anymore for the Saints. He took a year off, but you have to go back to the days of like John Gruden, which was basically like 2 number ones and a second rounder. It's a steep price to pay. But if you've seen what a guy like Kyle Shanahan can do with limited draft picks and a 7th round pick in Brock Purdy, you have to salivate at what he can do with a guy like Caleb Williams and that roster the Bears have and more picks. They've got cap space. Same thing with Sean McVay. Sean McVay has won a Super Bowl, has gone far in the playoffs with a guy like Matthew Stafford, and they didn't have a 1st round pick for like 5 years straight. They still found the Cooper Kupps in the world and the Puka Nakuas of the world and all these, the Kieran Williams of the world and all these studs on both sides of the football. So, I think an elite head coach is worth that. I personally, if Kyle Shanahan called his agent after week 18 and said, hey, listen, I love San Francisco, but I think the door is closed here. You got to get me somewhere else. I like that Caleb Williams kid. I want to coach him. I think the Bears should pursue it. Yeah, and I would do the trade. Listen, we've been doing status quo since all of us have been alive. We've done the defensive, hard-nosed head coach in Lovie Smith and John Fox and Dave Wanstead. We've done the next up, offensive guy in your Mark Trestmans of the world and Matt Nagy of the world and stuff like that. The Bears have always kind of, done the safe status quo thing. Maybe it's time we shake it up a little bit. Maybe it's time you shake the trees a little bit. And I think this is where Kevin Warren comes into play. You want to build a stadium on the lakefront that costs you $2 billion? Go get a fucking head coach that knows what he's doing, that's been to a Super Bowl and can cultivate your beautiful Ferrari of a 1st round pick that you have and let this kid go 180 miles an hour, every week in, week out. That's how you get a brand new stadium on the lakefront that you want. So I would do it personally. I know it could be controversial, but fuck it. What you've been doing right now hasn't worked. Maybe it's time to shake it up a little bit.
Yeah, no question. That's a name that would move to the top of the list, obviously, right away. And and if you can, do something not losing a ton of draft capital, I think it makes a lot of sense to get a guy like him. But John 2.0 asks, why does Ryan Poles get another chance the second season? Chance was this season. He picked Flus and Waldron after interviewing Quinn and Kingsbury, so Poles gets another chance. What say you, Ross?
Yeah, I like the roster that he's built. He's made mistakes on the coaching staff. I completely agree with that, but I still like the roster that he's built. I still like the moves that he's made. And if you fire Ryan Poles and you go out there and you go search for another general manager, you're resetting the clock again and again and again. I don't think you can do that right now. A new general manager is going to want to put his imprint on the roster. Now all of a sudden you're putting yourself another 4 or 5 years behind the 8 ball. You have to win while this quarterback is on a rookie contract because he's going to be really, really expensive 3 years from now. And so I want Ryan Poles to continue to build this roster with Caleb Williams on this rookie quarterback. Just go get the right head coach. And that's what we're saying. Go get, if you have to pay Ben Johnson $14 million a year, I don't give a shit. If you have to go out there and get do what it takes to get Kyle Shanahan, I don't give a shit. Go ahead and do it. So I would never fire Ryan Poles right now. Doing that, you're going to reset that clock. You're going to reset this roster. You're just doing Caleb Williams a disservice. You might as well trade him at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I concur with everything you said. I think just based on the draft so far, I know that there's still questions about Darnell Wright. Is he worth, top 10 pick? And there's other questions, but I think,
Gunnar has been awesome. He has to
yeah.
stay on the field, but he's been
Oh
awesome.
yeah, I'm just throwing out particular
Yeah.
names. He's been great. I agree with, and the ones that he's hit on. And look at the trades he make getting T.J. Edwards. He's a huge plus on that defense. Kevin Byard's a veteran presence. And it all comes back to the next man up. Offensive line, it's out of your control. But you think if this team maintained health along the offensive defensive line, the only thing he's really missed on, I feel like, is addressing that pass rush. And you can't really give him much credit for taking Caleb Williams number 1 overall, but still. Maybe if you take Jaden Daniels, it's a completely different conversation. The big negative is standing behind, Matt Eberflus. And maybe Ryan Poles this whole time, we don't know how he felt about Matt Eberflus. I think, obviously, having a part of that, but we know how the ownership felt about Matt Eberflus. And getting to this point, he may have been one of those big proponents of saying, hey, we got to cut this guy loose. He's been a dead man walking. It's just bad all around for the guys, just for morale and everything that goes on in that organization when they're already reeling.
If I told you some things I've heard off the record about Poles and Eberflus, I think a lot of people would think twice about putting the blame on Ryan Poles for the Matt Eberflus situation, especially going into this year. And remember, this was public information. Even when Poles was hired, he was only given 3 candidates to choose from head coach. This was the Bill Polian situation. This was Matt Eberflus. This was Jim Caldwell. This was Dan Quinn. So again, you limit him, you neuter him at the start of his job to only these 3 candidates. But that's a whole different conversation for a whole different time.
John 2.0, the bottom line is he's a leader of men. You just got to get behind him. Rossi, you sick of it yet?
So sick of it. Isn't that the most cliche thing in the world?
As our boy Greg Gabriel just tweeted it too. It's been trending for far too long.
It has been, absolutely.
Dumb.
$25 million a year professional athletes that live in millionaire mansions need leaders of men. You know what they need? They need fucking awesome offense. That's what leads men, was when you can put 32 points a game up on the board.
Put up points, baby.
Yes.
Let's see it Sunday. Let's switch focus. We'll give our predictions to end the game, or to end the show rather, about the game. But let's talk about the rest of the NFL. Ooh, did you watch the AFC North Hard Knocks? I'm enjoying it. I like the certainly Mike Tomlin, who was mic'd up a ton for that, was a big part of that, and John Harbaugh was talking about his story as well. Was cool to see, and then focusing on the Bengals and the Browns, just are kind of a feel good story, turning it around after Jameis Winston comes, but he's just so hit or miss, and he's just the cause of his own doom, I should say, when he's throwing these late interceptions and single-handedly sinking his team's chances and chances like that. But I think the biggest thing I took away from that NFC North Hard Knocks was that you and Joe Burrow are about to be the owners of Batmobiles in 2025. So, how about it?
If I had Joe, my affinity
Joe
for
Burrow
Batman,
money, yeah.
Everybody that knows me knows I am obsessed with Batman. If I had Joe Burrow's money, I would also buy a Batmobile. So listen, Joe, no shame on my end. I do not judge you at all. Do it. Even if they said that thing's not even street legal, who cares? I would do donuts in the driveway with that sucker. That is awesome. That is a flex for Joe. Joe was already one of my 5 favorite quarterbacks in the league. He just probably moved up to like number 3 after that.
But within that Hard Knocks, which will carry on, it was a great look at the Steelers and how this team is built to really challenge the Chiefs. I think just on offense and defense right now, like Russell Wilson is hitting his stride and starting to really show that Russell Wilson of the past when he exploded against the Bengals, for 44 points. He had over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, and in a big divisional game to get to 9-3. That was huge to get that win, and their defense clicking at the right time. I know they allowed 38 against the Bengals, but still they're obviously at the top of the AFC for good reason. And the Vikings, at 10-2, this is the NFC North. Outside of the Eagles, it's got to be one of those teams, I feel like, that presses to get and represent the NFC in the Super Bowl at this point. I feel like the Chiefs are showing the weaknesses a little bit. They had a close game against divisional opponent Raiders and just a low-scoring affair in 1917 where Brock Bowers just ran over them. But, at this point, they're just trying to stay healthy and get into the playoffs with no injuries to Pat Mahomes and the rest of the offensive line and the key players that they're going to need to make another run at this potential Super Bowl, potential three-peat, I should say. But the Eagles, man, what a challenge! Like what a great story. They are 10-2, and they showed up and beat the Ravens. John Harbaugh's Ravens pretty handily, 24-19. I know that like it's so crazy to see a kicker's downfall like Tucker and how he's just come back down to earth after just being automatic for so long. And to see that, him put that on his shoulders is pretty wild to see as well. But outside of the Chiefs, we got to talk about the Bills too and how good they are in that snow game, like you talked about, Ross, 35-10. They just run over teams, like literally, obviously with James Cook and what Josh Allen is able to do, being front runner for NFL MVP for very good reason, is just really, really cool to see. So, what are your impressions going into this week 14 and AFC, NFC, movers, shakers? What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, it's starting to be a very top heavy NFL on both sides. I think we're going down to 4 teams at the very, very top. You talked about the Bills and the Chiefs on the AFC side of things. Then it's the Lions and the Eagles on the other side in the NFC. Josh Allen's the MVP. He's going to win the MVP. You saw last week, they're going to put it on the highlight. The guy throws a football, he throws a pass, he gets a lateral back, he runs it in for a touchdown. Those are the kind of things you see that in the snow game. You're like, oh shit, this guy's the MVP. He's got that wrapped up. Shout out to Josh Allen. This guy's filthy rich, rocket arm, MVP. Teams winning. He gets to marry Haley Steinfeld, who's like the next Hawkeye. Just living the dream. This guy, Josh Allen. And I think that they can. The takeaway for me is both number 2 seeds in the AFC and the NFC. I actually like them better than the 1 seeds in both conference. And so I think that the Bills can beat the Chiefs, even in Arrowhead. Obviously, we've seen some epic instant classic matchups between those 2 teams in the playoffs. Who can forget the 12-second game where the Bills thought they were going to win, and then Mahomes goes back down and gets them again. We know about the playoffs from last year. But I think that, the Bills are playing better complete football right now. And you hit it on the head. This Chiefs team's gotten very, very lucky. They should have probably lost even last week against the Raiders on that Black Friday game. It's a very weird, 11-1 team, and it's 11-1 team that can't be got. They're 11-1. Their point differential right now is only plus 54. Compare that to the Bills, who's at plus 131, and they can't shake the Bills right now in the standings. The Bills are right there. If the Chiefs lose one game, the Bills could still win that 1 seed. And I think the same thing applies to the NFC. Less than an hour from now, we got a big football game with the Lions and the Packers. And I actually think that the Packers are going to win that football game tonight. They're underdogs with the Lions right now. We saw last Thursday, they're beaten up on defense. They're missing a lot of bodies out there. This is going to be a very feisty, finicky, division game. And let's say the Packers win this game tonight. The Lions are like, shit, we've won 10 straight games. And we can't shake the Eagles. The Eagles are right there, a game behind them. The Eagles have won 8 straight. And I think if the Lions lose tonight and the Eagles win on Sunday, then all of a sudden the Eagles could take that 1 seed. And it's a different ball game when you have to go to Philly outdoors in January for the NFC Championship as opposed to staying indoors, right? We saw Lions lose last year. They were great indoors. And then they had to go to San Francisco, and then they lost a heartbreaker. So I like both 2 seeds in the conferences to actually be the best teams left in the conference right now. With the other teams, I'm a little disappointed in Baltimore, especially after last week. I thought that was a game that Baltimore could have, should have won. That was a home game against a good team in the Eagles. They were up in that football game, and they do what Baltimore does. Baltimore just can't quite get over that hump a little bit. I am a big fan of the Steelers. Mike Tomlin is my favorite head coach in football. He is as steady as it gets. He's gotten Russell Wilson to play very good football. He can get George Pickens to stay in check for a little bit. TJ Watt is one of the best defensive players in the league. That defense is ferocious. They play just good, sound football, especially this time of year where it gets cold. The running game is starting to look good. So I do like that team as a sneaky team. I can't quite get there with the Vikings, especially after watching them against that Bears team. They just, they feel very vulnerable to me. They feel like a very vulnerable 10-2 team. But you look around the rest of the NFL, Kirk Cousins threw 4 interceptions last week. He looked like shit. The Buccaneers stayed there, whatever. You want to bet on Geno Smith in the playoffs against the Vikings, stuff like that. So again, very, very top heavy to me with the 4 teams. I like the 2 seeds better than the 1 seeds. And then the other teams are just kind of fighting to see, who's going to maybe get blown out by one of those teams when it gets further down the playoffs.
Yeah, agreed. Detroit has that edge as far as experience. I mean, in the window of the last few years, so have the Eagles, and then bringing Saquon Barkley, that offense I think is huge. Take some pressure off Jalen Hurts and his package of receivers, and then don't forget about the Eagles. Young secondary that they have that really had a tough task of bottling up Derrick Henry and keeping Lamar Jackson in check, and they rose to the occasion there. I agree with you. The Vikings kind of being frauds, and really if the Packers are going to make a run, Jordan Love's just got to stop turning the ball over, and he's got to stack some wins within the division, obviously, to secure that wild card berth. If you figured the Lions are going to remain either the 1 or 2 seed at this time, and yeah, very top heavy. The Chiefs or the Bills. You think it's a coin flip between those 2 teams and who's going to represent the AFC. It feels like the Bills are always so close, and Josh Allen is just getting better every season. Loves that competition against the Chiefs and Pat Mahomes, but Pittsburgh, do not sleep on them. And a tough test for, the Chiefs when you're thinking about playoff football at this point, when Sunday and the Sunday nighter, there's kind of some dud games. Like you said, just more jockeying for position for the NFC South, which is still kind of up for grabs, even though the the Seahawks are top of the division right now, but the Chargers visiting the Chiefs should be a good game. Other than that, man, yeah, it's just not a great slate, as it were. Yeah, into the Monday night game with a snoozer and the Bengals and Cowboys. A lot of the last bye week of the season when we got 6 teams on a bye, it provides a bit of a hole, especially if you're jockeying for fantasy playoff position, which I know you are.
Yeah, that's the weird thing is you have so many bye weeks this week, and I think the NFL did that because they have to do that, because if you look forward, we get Christmas Day games this year, and so we get 2 Wednesday games on Christmas Day. It's Kansas City in Pittsburgh, awesome game, and then it's Baltimore in Houston with Beyonce performing at halftime, another awesome game. So I think they're really trying to stack the schedule for the last few weeks of the season. So I think this is your last, quote unquote dud week in the NFL, and then we go guns blazing through the rest of the year, playoffs, Super Bowl.
Yes, sir. Well, let's go to some quick hits as we're wrapping up the show. And man, when we signed off, if only we knew what the next day would bring us, Ross, and Kendrick has had such a crazy year. Just thinking about back to, his song and his verse is talking, there's no big 3, it's just big me, and how he just started this whole, continued the rap battle with Drake, or just the animosity with him at this point, and just his remaining the top dog in hip hop has just been pretty incredible. And GNX sort of is just a nice pin and a victory lap for him, the end of 24, and then announcing his tour, following the Super Bowl performance that he's going to have. I mean, that album was great from top to bottom. Another just great work from Kendrick, getting Mustard again on production. Just a lot of great West Coast features, and SZA on there. Mustard was, dude, just the drop of the year. As far as that's concerned, following up Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, I mean, it's pretty wild to see his ascension and just staying at top, just really, making all these doubters that he is at the top quiet. Yeah, I know that ticket is going to be expensive for any of these shows at this point in the arena tour. Now he's Arena Kenny at this point, after he's going to be playing the Super Bowl, like we talked about as well. Do you have a favorite track off GNX? What were your thoughts about it?
You know me, the old school. We'll talk about our Spotify rap in a minute. It has a lot of old soul on there. So Luther will always stick out to me. The If This World Was Mine, Luther Vandross Flip, the song that he has with SZA, track number 3. TV off, the beat flip and TV off is just absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And he's got a lot of West Coast vibes on here. I've also grew up as a 80s 90s child, a huge Tupac fan, and like not the hits but the deep cuts. And so to hear Reincarnated, to hear the beat flip on Reincarnated again, those were the 3 tracks that are my favorite: Luther, Reincarnated, and TV off. The whole album is great. Shout out to him. Even the Heart Part 6, he uses the SWV sample, which is awesome. I think the Dodger Blue is going to play very well if you go to LA or Cali in the summertime and you find yourself outside and it's 85-degree weather, kind of like similar to the recipe that he did, right, with Dr. Dre. That song that they had, very LA themed, kind of summer vibe party anthem. He did it. He did what he did. He sprayed the all fields. He put a cap on. I'm the best rapper on the planet right now. I have had the best year as a rapper. Now it's time to do a tour. SZA is top 3 R&B artists right now. They're probably going to have Doechii perform, open up for them. In my opinion, she had the best hip hop album of the year. Like that's easily, to me, she had the best hip hop album. And so, they're on fire. Top dog right now. Entertainment is on fire right now. And it was fun. For me, it was fun. It's fun to see all of this. And it's fun to see the album be very Kendrick heavy in terms of his skill set and very LA heavy, and not have it be about Drake anymore. I'm tired of when I say Kendrick, I have to say Drake and vice versa. And because it brings out the stands on both sides. I just want to hear the good music. And so I was happy that he left Not Like Us off the album, because we can sit that over there as a single with the other disses that he had. But the album is like, this is a Kendrick album. It's got nothing to do with Drake. Let's get off of all that stuff. And I appreciated that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point there. And to your point about Doechii, she's having a phenomenal year.
Absol had I can go. Those guys had it. That whole label had an amazing. Absol had an amazing album. Amazing album.
Yeah, Doechii with a great performance on Colbert at that album is really good. That would be a hell of a lineup to see SZA and Kendrick and Doechii on the same bill as well, coming to Soldier Field in June. But to your Wrapped, Ross, how'd that turn out? And I mean, who's your top album? Who's your top song? What you got in your rotation?
My top album, it was a lot of Griselda on there for hip hop. So a lot of Benny the Butcher. Benny the Butcher dropped the album this year. Conway the Machine dropped the album. Shout out to Griselda. I love listening to all their music.
They're always good projects. Yeah.
Yes. It was a lot of old school stuff. It was the same. It was the same old school stuff. It was the same, LTD and Shaka Khan and Luther Vandross and Prince and Michael Jackson. And I'm always going to go back to that. It's funny because there is a documentary right now on Max about Yacht Rock. And which is an amazing documentary. Steely Dan and Toto and Michael McDonald and all those guys. And on my rap this year, literally 2 months this year, Yacht Rock was my number 1 genre. So, as I get a little bit older, into my 40s, into mid 40s, I just want to hear the classics, and I want to hear the nice, smooth, cool vibe, something that you can sit outside and sip your rum, sip your bourbon to, and maybe smoke your joint or take a little edible and enjoy the vibes of a Toto, or listen to some Africa, some Steely Dan.
Go in the Wayback Machine. Steely Dan, man. If you listen to Asia, that is one of the most sonically perfect albums. It's a good one. And as much as I listen to Doechii and Tyler the Creator and Kendrick and sort of newer acts, it's in my Wrapped, I feel like, despite algorithm being ruined by a kid wanting Lion King and Moana and heavy rotation. And I learned about excluding the playlist from Taste Too Late. It was heavy, the usual bangers like Jack White and Black Keys and a lot of Motown and just, the classics, like you said, that are just going to be more fit in the vibe for sure. But it is quite a cap to 2024. As you said, Top Dog seemed to run it. This was that very pop heavy year of what's her name? Chappelle Rowe and Sabrina Carpenter and Charlie XCX, all those.
Couldn't tell you 5 songs from any of them.
I listened to Brad. I was like, yeah, the beats are cool. I'm like, this is for me, and I'm not gonna sit through a Sabrina Carpenter album and stick to my wheelhouse, so to speak. But the classic acts are still there. Taylor Swift is obviously at the top of her game, running it. So everybody's rap is probably all over the place.
Yeah.
But did you see Gladiator 2?
I have not seen Gladiator 2 yet. I am waiting for a break to be able to see that. I'm only going for Denzel, to be honest. I mean, who are we?
And he's the reason to go. I saw it over Thanksgiving week, and I'll say it does a good job if that's the intent, which it obviously is with Ridley Scott and this project. However many years it took between the two, but to pick up pretty much 15 years, whatever it is, after Gladiator 1 left off and carry on that storyline largely. The stepping in as the Caesars, like these twin brothers, it's tough to play that Joaquin Phoenix role. So that was kind of a letdown. I think Paul Mescal was a great, protagonist, and
he's the actor in the world. Yeah, he's a big
he's hosting SNL Saturday, and he's blowing up right now. It was showing those, and I'm forgetting the young man's name who played one of the Caesars as well, and then obviously Pedro Pascal, who's at the top of his game right now. But Denzel played a good, sort of protagonist turning antagonist. Spoiler alert towards the end there, and it all is very Ridley Scott, where it's at times you're like, this is ridiculous, but also thinking about the showmanship and going back to Coliseum, like that's what you're there for, is those Coliseum fights, and that production budget is just wild. So looking forward to your thoughts on that. But we got to wrap it up, Ross. We got to give our predictions as the Bears visit the 49ers on Sunday. It'll be a nice 64, 65 degree day at the Bay, as you see there in Santa Clara. Yep. And San Francisco favored by 3.5. I got the Bears perhaps winning this one. I'm going to go 26-20. And I think that Thomas Brown gets his, interim head coaching era with the Bears started off right, and Caleb Williams continues to be hot.
I would love to say that. I got the Bears covering but losing. I'm going to go 24-21 San Francisco. Another heartbreaker. Bears lose another one.
Heartbreaker. What a bummer. The losses continue, which would not be surprising to me. But thank you to everybody for watching on YouTube and listening on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your media from. Barroom Network. Remember to like, subscribe, tell a friend or two, and all our great program, Greg Gabriel, Aldo, and company. Tooch, thanks for listening and watching here. If you've missed any of the previous episodes, they're on the YouTube channel. They're on Spotify and iTunes, as I mentioned. Follow me at The Real Evan Mac. Follow Ross at Ross Reed. But for now, we say deuces. Everybody be good to each other. So long.
Peace.
Thank you.